Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X.
Originally named Malcolm Little and later Malik El-Shabazz. He was born in Omaha, Nebraska on May 19th, 1925, and was the fourth of 7 children. Malcolm spent his adolescence living in a series of foster homes with relatives after the death of his father and his mother's hospitalization for mental health. He excelled in school, but dropped out of high school when his teacher told him a Negro cannot be a lawyer. After moving to Harlem, New York, he took up employment with the New Haven Railroad. In 1945, Malcolm returned to Boston, where he and 4 accomplices committed a series of burglaries in wealthy white neighborhoods and was sentenced to prison in 1946 for 10 years. While in prison, he joined the Nation of Islam and adopted the name Malcolm X to symbolize his unknown African ancestral surname. His last name, Little, represented the white slave master's name and that he no longer claimed. While in prison, Malcolm wrote to Elijah Muhammad, who advised him to renounce his past, humbly bow in prayer to God, and promise never to engage in destructive behavior again. They maintained a regular correspondence from that point on.
He was released on parole in 1952 and became one of the most influential leaders to the Nation of Islam, becoming assistant minister at the Nation's Temple No. 1 in Detroit. For 12 years, he advocated Black empowerment and established more temples. He was a critic to the Main Street Civil Rights Movement for his emphasis on nonviolence and racial integration. His support on these stances subjected him to surveillance by the FBI. Malcolm X did express pride in some of the Nation of Islam's social welfare achievements, such as their free drug rehabilitation program. He married Betty Sanders, who later changed her name to Betty X after joining the Nation of Islam. They had 6 daughters, 2 sets of twins, of which were born after his death.
An incident at a New York prison in 1957 where Malcolm gathered thousands to protest the arrest of 4 African Americans who were members of the Nation of Islam elevated his identity to the American public. He was able to get 2 of them on bail quickly. One police officer told the New York Amsterdam News, "No one man should have that much power." It was then the police department's mission to keep Malcolm X under surveillance and assign undercover officers to infiltrate the Nation of Islam. His connections with other leaders of the world grew, including that of Fidel Castro, the Prime Minister of Cuba. He mentored and guided Louis X, later known as Louis Farrakhan, who eventually became the leader of the Nation of Islam.
The Nation of Islam.
The Nation of Islam.
During 1962 and 1963, events caused Malcolm to reassess his relationships with the Nation of Islam and its leader Elijah Muhammad. Other controversies, such as the violence by the LAPD at Temple No. 27, remarks on President Kennedy's assassination, and allegations of misconduct against Elijah Muhammad, led Malcolm to leave the Nation of Islam on March 8, 1964. After completing the Hajj to Mecca, an annual Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca, Saudi Arabia, the holiest city for Muslims, he became known as El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. He then directed his efforts to plan and organize Black nationalist organizations to heighten the political consciousness of African Americans. Subsequently, he founded the Muslim Mosque, Inc., a religious organization, and the Organization of Afro-American Unity, a secular group that advocated Pan-Africanism. He also converted to Sunni Islam. After his travels abroad on his new missions of civil rights from a different path, he returned home and began to receive death threats from the Nation of Islam. On February 21st, 1965, he was preparing to address the OAAU when a person in the crowd yelled, causing a disturbance, catching Malcolm and his bodyguards off guard. He was shot 21 times. Actor and activist Ossie Davis delivered the eulogy at the funeral, saying, "Our shining Black prince, who didn't hesitate to die because he loved us so."
This has been a Black History Month moment brought to you by the Black Excellence Leadership Council. Until next time.